Hot take. I saw The Devil is kinda bad. It is one of those niche Korean movies that's suited to Reddit's main demographic. It is critically not well received domestically, but it is massively praised overseas. Many YouTube essays hype it as an essential piece of Korean cinema and a super profound, deep revenge movie. A movie you regret watching or won't want to watch again. I see threads and comments about it constantly, to the point where I wonder whether or not there is some marketing involved. There are much better revenge films like the Vengeance trilogy, The Revenant, Virgin Spring that ask the similar question as this movie does, and infinitely better. I don't care much about Memento or Carrie, but at least they convey their subject matter of revenge with a certain amount of intelligence, subtlety, and respect for the audience, as well as crafted with a much better filmmaking to boot. Anecdotally, a few people I know watched it and they all thought the movie was cringe, including myself. I Saw the Devil is a revenge thriller in which the protagonist's lover is brutally murdered by a serial killer. The protagonist tracks down the serial killer via some detective work outside of the boundaries of the law. When one of the very first leads brings the protagonist directly to the killer, the fight ensues, and he gets the killer almost dead. The movie then pivots and has the protagonist let him go because a quick death is too good for you. Not in the sense that he lets the serial killer go to jail. He literally sets the killer free with cash of money, which leads to the killer committing more rapes and murders. Then the protagonist chases him, lets him go, and the serial killer inflicts collateral damage upon people. Repeat. A series of edgy, disturbing, hyper-violent set pieces ensues for the sake of the message of revenge makes you a monster. After the first effective, shocking murder scene in the beginning, the movie devolves into gory misery porn that is trying too hard to shock the audience with too many moments of just absurd, unrealistic, immersion-breaking nonsense because everything hinges upon that one part of the premise.
There's a Nietzsche quote which is bandied around in this, which is, he who fights monsters should see to it that he does not in the process become monstrous, which we all thought was incredibly intelligent and brilliant when we were teenagers. And then sort of later on you start to realise that, if I hear it again in a horror movie, I think I will scream, because it's that idea about, you fight monsters, you become monstrous, and here is some evidence of you becoming monstrous. The really disappointing thing about I Saw the Devil, and I know a lot of people would be interested in it because Kim Ji-woon is an interesting director, and he's a very, very stylish director, and there are moments in it which the floating camera and the strength of performance in Choi Min-sik's got a very sort of strange presence. You think all this technical skill is being used actually to tell a story which I have seen done better so many places. Plus, it is nasty and grim and salacious in a way which I found really, really off-putting. And it's long, and it tires the audience out quite. It outstays its welcome quite solidly.
You don't learn much about the protagonist or the serial killer in depth, or anyone else like the lover's sister and father. The villain is the most developed character in the movie, and even then, there is barely anything the audience knows about him beyond the most stereotypical crazy serial killer archetype, which just boils down to hacky writing. I Saw the Devil doesn't work as a character piece when the movie runs away from exploring what the characters are feeling or who they are for the sake of exclusively sticking its entire 2 hours and half runtime to the Tom and Jerry premise. The plot and the action are the driving force. That's why it lacks the weight of character interactions, as every character is one note that nobody really cares about, and the dialogue provides nothing memorable. I am genuinely baffled by the near-constant threads evangelizing the movie. In contrast, Old Boy, not the remake, does the opposite of that. Old Boy is a character-driven narrative because it actually is more focused on exploring the character, their feelings, the way they look or see the world, and their growth. The plot revolves around the characters. We get the characters put in different situations and going through different emotions. It makes all the main characters multifaceted because you actually get to see that multifaceted nature being brought out. Disa's interactions with each and every character are fascinating and have weight. Scene writing is phenomenal. It has multiple dialogue scenes that etch into your mind without action. Unlike I Saw the Devil's generic interactions and typical approach to developing characters while lacking an actual point behind it. Disa's confrontations with the villain work because the writers put in the time and effort and did the heavy lifting, contrasted to just the characters beating the shit out of each other and letting the villain go. The movie pushes the medium as far as it could when it comes to using all of the cinematic elements to work together to convey its core thematical idea. So, let's talk about The Last of Us. I don't view The Last of Us Part 1 as a masterpiece of storytelling. It tackles a generic concept and executes it in a straightforward way with no real ambition. It is still more or less a simplified knockoff of The Road and Children of Man, derivative even in its own medium. Telltale's The Walking Dead basically did what The Last of Us did like a year earlier with far better characterization and writing. Lee and Clementine are miles more layered and explored protagonists than Joel and Ellie. Who was Joel before the apocalypse? The game doesn't show. Who was Joel after the apocalypse, but before the story? The game kind of hints, but nobody really knows. The game practically skips through things that can flesh out Joel. His daughter dies, but that in itself does not give him depth. It simply makes his character sympathetic rather than a character that has a trajectory in terms of how his character goes through actual changes. You almost never see the characters processing with their trauma. Notice how many times it happens in this game. Something horrible happens, and then suddenly the game skips time. When the character has to process the events, the game skips ahead of the actual heavy lifting and just shows you that the character has changed, ending up seeing the character being different than her usual self.
Oh my god. Jackson County. Means we're close to Jackson City, right?
It off-screens character growth.
Ellie!
Yet, despite light on the individual characterizations, The Last of Us succeeded in making the player care about the relationship between the two leads as one whole, giving the feeling that the player went through a grand journey with them and selling that they would accept each other as father and daughter. That's the whole point of the story. I believe The Last of Us' success in its story is partially due to the little emphasis on the plot. The Last of Us story is not a conventional Hollywood three-act structure, but is more of a serialized episodic format, with what seemed like unrelated events acclimated into the build-up of Joel and Ellie's relationship span across a year. The plot is simple enough to describe within 3 sentences, but the game is not particularly focused on the plot. It was a fluff, feel-good piece of entertainment and used its tight pacing as well as the side cast in a way to disguise the simple characters by making the narrative consistently move through nail-biting set pieces. For example, Henry and Sam's story is not related to the central plot of the game. Sam and Henry are not all that deep characters. This plotline can be cut out and Joel and Ellie's journey would play out the same, unaffected, but it plays a pivotal role in Joel and Ellie's relationship. Henry and Sam's pair is a mirror image of Joel and Ellie, and their fate makes him scared of what would happen to him and Ellie. Thus why Joel insisted to leave Ellie to Tommy during Tommy's damn chapter.
What are you so afraid of? That I'm gonna end up like Sam? I can't get infected!
The gradual relationship building is a key to The Last of Us storytelling. Unlike many other game stories that are macroscopic in nature, The Last of Us offers a more intimate microscopic viewpoint on the events. There's been a common theme in every chapter reflecting Joel and Ellie. All the seemingly separate events tie into the greater thematic continuity, which motivates Joel's decision in the climax. This lack of a coherent plot means the story is dependent on the dialogues, characters, and situational suspense. The Last of Us Part 2 begins with the same strength as Part 1, which gave me hope for the game despite the bad buzz. Joel is talking about what he did at the hospital to Tommy. The player learns it's been only months, maybe weeks since Part 1. Joel meets with Ellie. The player doesn't learn anything new about these characters individually, but through their interactions, we understand their relationship is awkward due to Joel's lie. She is full of doubts, and Joel is full of guilt, but they decide to go along to preserve their relationship. They don't spell it out, but we get unspoken emotions.
Okay.
Do you remember the joke?
This, right here, is where The Last of Us shines. The relationship between the two main leads. Not their individual characters, which are rather simple, but when they share the screen together.
It's time-consuming.
That's so dumb.
However, aside from the flashbacks featuring Joel and Ellie together, the main story of Part 2 is the exact opposite. I remember one of the users saying, when an artist does a business, you get Metal Gear Solid 4. And when a businessman does an art, you get The Last of Us Part 2. I do appreciate the game pulling several big ball story moves compared to the other safe, boring AAA blockbuster games, but I wonder if the direction Part 2 went to make an edgier Tom and Jerry was a good decision. The first game was all about feel-good moments with the two leads, and used the side cast to amplify the relationship growth. The second game doesn't understand this, and instead seems to think it's too clever with its premise. Spectacles and set pieces through gameplay driven by relationships are what Naughty Dog is good at, and The Last of Us 2 showcase what happens if they abandon that. The sequel has a constantly evolving plotline, with a lot more things going on in the plot. There is now more of consistency in the journeys with several integral subplots happening simultaneously. I believe this is why, for many people, Part 2 feels so different from the first game. Unlike the spontaneous character-driven original, Part 2 has a sense that the plot dictates the characters to do certain things, as if the characters act out of character, so big events the writers had planned could happen. It treats characters like pieces on a chessboard that need to be moved around dramatically as the plot dictates, not so many individual characters making organic and consistent decisions and actions. Forcing the characters to conform to the plot and the theme is something Neil Druckmann himself has admitted as a pitfall he almost fell into when making the first game during the Writing Honestly IGDA lecture. His keynote speech regarding the first game revealed that his original pitch that was rejected was basically what Part 2 ended up being.
And now she's dragged to the side. She's about to be executed. Joel remembers his daughter. He stands up, wrestles a gun out of the soldier's hand. This firefight breaks out. And when all the dust settles, Tess's brother is killed in kind of the firefight. Now Tess holds Joel responsible for this thing, and they split ways, and Joel escapes the city with Ellie and Marlene. And the idea, again, was to build up to this climactic moment where Joel gets incapacitated when Tess, this relentless force from his past, catches up with him. And Joel tells her, there is no cure, we're too late. Whatever antibodies you have, they're all gone. We had to leave the lab. And they get in a fight because she's not sure she believes what he's telling her. But again, Tess, this relentless force, slams into the truck. She's now with their old gang, and they're trying to get revenge on Joel. And they surround Joel and Ellie in this ranch house. As Joel, you kind of have this climactic fight with your old gang, but eventually you get captured by Tess. And now we see just how far Tess has come in this relationship and how she's willing to torture Joel to make him suffer. And just like she lost her brother, she wants to kill Ellie in front of him just to make him pay for that. And Joel tells her, there's nothing you could do to me. There's nothing you could cut. I've already essentially sold my soul to save this girl. And on that, we flash back to the lab where the doctor was telling Joel it's complicated. And as Tess is finishing torturing Joel, she realizes he's not going to talk, and she levels the gun against his head, and on the gunshot, we slam to black. And in fact, it's Ellie that bursts into the room right before Tess was going to shoot Joel, and she ends up shooting Ellie. Sorry, she ends up shooting Tess. She doesn't shoot her. So that was the story as we pitched it, probably mid to late 2010.
But you had to be persuaded to change it after the staff pointed the story didn't work.
It failed for kind of a lot of reasons. The biggest of which, I think, is Joel's motivation. Like, Joel went from being this kind of hardened survivor to this father figure in an instant. As soon as Ellie reminded him of his daughter, he was willing to kill soldiers and protect her and just throw his whole old life away, and even abandoning his old partner. And every time we'd kind of pitch the story, we'd hear kind of the comments man, Joel's turning pretty quickly. And again, some of this issue was my letting go of, I got attached to certain ideas, and it was just hard to kind of release them. The other problem that we had was Tess. I guess in some ways this was a bigger problem where her motivation was even harder to buy into. Here was Joel's old partner, and to no fault of his own, her brother died, and now she's going to go crazy and take her whole gang and pursue him across the country for a year. It's she just seemed like a psycho. You didn't buy into it. It just seemed kind of a weird thing that we stuck in the story just for the sake of having this antagonist. And again, every time, but the problem with both of these things, and why I held on to them for so long is I didn't want to let go of that ending. That ending in my mind was so cool when you get to play Ellie a second time and save Joel. But we just approached it from all these different angles for so long, and eventually it was okay, what if we just cut that ending? What if we didn't end it there?
Unfortunately, Part 2 does not feel like it was written honestly. This problem plagues the story so many times over the course of the game. It's serious and has lots of gore and edgy stuff in it. But don't confuse that edge with it being able to say anything important on anything. All the characters have been demoted into one-dimensional revenge mode. The tone was constantly monotonous without balancing it. For the first playthrough, the pacing was bad. For the repeated playthrough, it became torturous. And every time the game had momentum, the game's structure actively worked against it. The game's plot was not interesting enough to warrant this long playtime. It's a story that can be told in 9 or 10 hours easily, but is dragged out for over 20 hours with endless gameplay and cinematic sections. It is honestly on par with a CW teen melodrama that tries to be serious. I have been thinking about how Part 2 could have been better ever since I first played it. I like the core theme being hate contrasted to the first game's love. That is the natural evolution the sequel can take. I agree with the direction that Part 2 should deal with the aftermath of Joel's action in Part 1, but the main plot should have been about how it affects the relationship between Joel and Ellie, which was what made the first game great. Now, that was a factor in the game's story, but it was largely focusing on the revenge story of Ellie, as well as Abby's story going on separately. But Ellie's anxiety and worsening relationship with Joel was only relevant for the quarter of the story, backslided into the flashbacks. This is unfortunate because although little there is, Part 2 features some of the most nuanced interactions between Joel and Ellie. I thought about how the different but simpler story could work as a more natural continuation from Part 1, and maintain the focus on the gradual relationship growth in the episodic journeys while recycling the elements from the game like the dual protagonists. Then I remembered Anna, Ellie's mother, who left the note for her daughter before her death. Life is worth living. Find your purpose and fight for it. Her character was left vague in the first game, but the HBO series showed the flashback of her death. She was played by Ellie's voice actor Ashley Johnson herself. In that show, we learned that Anna was Marlene's best friend during her childhood before the outbreak, which is why Marlene promised to look after Ellie. Anna fought with the infected and got bitten, but she also gave birth to Ellie in the process. Anna cuts the umbilical cord. But this occurred after she was bitten and started to succumb to the infection herself. This is why Ellie is immune. When Marlene arrived, Anna lied, saying that she cut the cord before she was bitten, and asked Marlene to find a home for Ellie, and gave her a switchblade to remember her by. I thought about what the sequel story could be. We have the same dual protagonist structure, but instead of the other character being Abby who kills Joel, it's Anna, and we play as her in the past, culminating in Ellie's birth. This isn't entirely a new idea. When the PGW 2017 trailer of Part 2 came out, which showed Abby being hung by the Seraphites and rescued by Yara and Lev, pretty much everyone assumed the woman in the scene was Anna.
The most important character in this scene, voiced by Laura Bailey, was not given a name. Instead, we are teased with 4 black character spots. Now, one of the more popular explanations for this character's identity is that this scene is a flashback and that Laura Bailey is playing the role of Ellie's mom.
Everyone thought we would be playing Ellie's mother in the flashbacks. Even Naughty Dog baited the audience in this direction with tweets.
She looks like Ellie. The tweet that Naughty Dog sent out had, the same amount of letters matching. So first I was like, is this really Anna? It's kind of too obvious that it is Anna, but the more I think about it, I really can't see any other way than this being Anna.
Long story short, this female character is an amalgamation of Ashley Johnson's face, Colleen Foch's body model, and Laura Bailey's facial and body performance, and I'm quite confident in stating that this can only be Ellie's mother, Anna. It is also my belief that at this point, Anna is already pregnant with Ellie, as noted by how Emily goes out of her way to lift her shirt before pointing the knife directly at her belly.
Obviously, she was not Anna, but looking back at this period in retrospect, I believe a lot of theories and speculations these analysis videos put out were far more compelling than the final product we eventually got. The Last of Us Part 2's title is a clear riff on The Godfather Part 2, which happens to share a similar dual protagonist concept. In that movie, it was there to show the generational parallel between the past story of Vito ushering in the Golden Age and the present story of his son, who is on the path of downfall. Even though the origin story does not interweave with each other plot-wise, it does emotionally, which gives dramatic weight to the present storyline. What if The Last of Us Part 2 was like The Godfather Part 2? Is it possible to reimagine The Last of Us Part 2 story? Execute the same ideas present in the game, while make it feel more like a more direct continuation of Part 1. However, I want it in the story at the same point as the game did. Joel dies, and Ellie is married to Dina with JJ as their child. This is not an elaborate outline, but an unrefined one comprised of bullet points. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. The intro is the same as the game. A few weeks after the first game, Joel tells Tommy what happened in the Firefly Hospital.
I saved her.
And she believed you?
I didn't say otherwise.
I can't say I'd have done different. I'll take it to the grave if I have to.
Ellie and Joel have awkward exchange. Joel plays the guitar and sings Future Days.
Good night, kiddo.
A year later, on her 16th birthday, Joel brings Ellie to the abandoned museum. We get to see a good old time between Joel and Ellie. Like the game, Ellie gets left alone in the dark building, and instead of promptly ending this section by having a deer fake out, there are actual infected roaming around. This serves as the first combat tutorial in the game, and we learn the basic mechanics like sneaking, throwing bottles, and shooting a pistol. It works as breaking the monotony of the vacation. As Ellie fights the infected her way through, Ellie finds messages written on the wall from a man who apparently hid out there. She eventually finds his corpse and a suicide note, revealing he was a former Firefly and came to the museum in the hopes of finding the light, only to lose all hope that humanity could be saved. Hearing her cry, Joel forces his way into the room. Ellie claims she is fine but stares at a Firefly insignia on the wall with the word liars written below it. Joel coaxes her to leave and forget about the group. She goes along, as she still wants to trust Joel in order to secure their relationship.
Well, let's get a move on. I want to get a fire going before it gets too dark. Come on.
A year later, Ellie is on patrol with Tommy and Joel. Her relationship with Joel is more distant at this point. Here, we establish a few things. Instead of Ellie merely talking about Dina and Jesse, they are here too. This part serves as the first introduction to these characters for the player, building the characters prior to the party scene where they kiss. Show Dina's friendship with Ellie and Jesse as they walk and talk on screen. We see Jesse treating Tommy's injury in the lodge. Jesse is training to be a medic and wants to contribute to Jackson as a surgeon later in his life. Dina and Jesse flirt each other, making the player understand their romantic relationship.
To cover a bite mark? Right here. I got jumped by an infected when I was 14, and turns out I'm immune, so it healed with a ring of fucked up teeth marks and cysts and...
Ow!
Fuck you. I told you a real fucking story.
I did tell you a real fucking story.
Dina reveals that she was once part of the Seraphites, a religious organization operating in Seattle. She defected and escaped the place, leaving her mother behind at a young age. And through many hassles and hardship, she ended up arriving at Jackson. It is clear that Dina feels guilty about leaving. She explains that the Seraphites sometimes hold parents culpable for their children's sins. In Dina's case, her mother would possibly be punished for their apostasy, although she believes her mother is devout enough to not be punished too harshly.
He's worried about her mom, about what'll happen to her because of us.
What could happen to her?
Sometimes parents are held responsible for their children's sins. But our mom is so devout, she'll probably be fine.
Dina wants to return to the island for their mother. She is missing her. Not just that, Dina also misses the Seraphites, the sense of longing. Ellie says Seattle was also where her mother Anna lived and was active as a firefly. And that's where she also died. Marlene hasn't talked about it a lot, so Ellie doesn't really know much about her mother's backstory. They then depart, and Joel takes Ellie into the hotel's restaurant. And this section plays exactly the same as the game. Ellie discovers two bodies on the floor, one shot dead and the other a mutated clicker. She reads a note next to one of the bodies. The note, and the fact the bodies were wearing backpacks marked with the Jackson community's signature J, confirms the pair were two teenagers who ran away in an effort to find the Fireflies and help save the world, only to be attacked and infected by a horde, causing their deaths. Further ridden with guilt, Ellie confronts Joel about what happened at the hospital in Salt Lake City.
After you took me out of the Firefly Hospital, you said there were dozens of people like me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they told me.
I've never met another immune person before. Have you?
I could be hiding it. You do.
Do you believe that?
Why did you pull me out of there while I was still unconscious?
Because I let them run their tests. And when I saw that they were useless, I got us out of there.
How do you know they were useless? Maybe if you just would have given them more time, they could have figured something out.
There was no cure. There's nothing that could help these people or anybody else. I know you wish things were different. I wish things were different. But they ain't.
He then shuts down the conversation before Ellie can argue further. The pair then leave to fetch Tommy to help carry the corpses back to their families in Jackson. Next scene, presumably a few weeks later, Ellie arrives at Salt Lake, and we play her as she investigates the entire hospital. Like the previous section, don't just make it a walking segment. Pepper some infected or bandit encounters throughout the hospital along the way for combat. Here's the first major difference from the game. Ellie does not find the tape recording that confirms what Joel did. Instead, the hospital is empty, abandoned. The bloody and messy aftermath of Joel's deed in the first game was cleaned up by the Fireflies. There is no vaccine files, materials, or documents left in the hospital. The Fireflies recovered them just before they evacuated. Ellie does not learn about the truth about what Joel did, including his massacre. Joel arrives, hugging her while chiding her for running away. Ellie asks Joel once again about what he told her. Why would the Fireflies abandon the hospital if they are still studying about the cure? Joel lies, saying the Fireflies headed elsewhere to recruit more patients. Ellie has no evidence or proof to argue otherwise. Although they ride back to Jackson, the trust is broken. With this unresolved resolution, the prologue ends with the title drop. Two years later, Ellie is now 19 years old. The dance party sequence is largely the same. Jesse saying how Joel lectures him on his patrol routes, particularly when Ellie is out on patrols with him, and talking about how he broke up with Dina. Ellie dances and kisses Dina. Joel comes in to defend Ellie against a homophobic Seth. Ellie is still upset at Joel and rejects his offer by lashing out against him.
You all right, kiddo?
What is wrong with you?
He had no right.
And you do?
There are two differences, though. First, there is something off about Dina's attitude, almost as if there is a sense of finality. Like this party is going to be the last time she's going to enjoy her life, which could be her reason to kiss Ellie. Second, Ellie and Joel don't have a conversation with each other about forgiveness, which means this sequence ends with Ellie and Joel's conflict unresolved. The next day, we play Ellie moving around Jackson to prepare for the patrol job. But since Ellie has not remedied her relationship with Joel, she is way more pissed off. When she meets Seth again, she doesn't just joke, bigot sandwich. She throws it on the ground. She doesn't want to stay in Jackson. She is sick of Joel, the patrol duty, and everything. She feels lost and alienated. Even the snowball fight doesn't make her happy. At this point in her life, Joel is out of a relationship. She thought she was only living for the cure, but obviously, she's being gaslit about that. She feels her life is a big, unfulfilled waste. Regardless, she goes off with Dina for duty. Ellie and Dina go through the patrol.
You clean.
But Ellie slowly learns that Dina didn't come out of Jackson only to patrol. She is leaving Jackson. She recently heard about the new rumors coming from Seattle. The Seraphites are now engaging a war against the Washington Liberation Front. Although Dina is living a good life at Jackson alone, her mother is still left behind, probably suffering and repenting. She is going back to the Seraphites to rescue her mother before the war gets worse. The guilt has been weighing on her, and she couldn't take it anymore. Ellie, similarly feeling lost, wants to go with her. Since the rebel groups are connected with each other, she suspects the Washington Liberation Front has ties with the Fireflies, especially since they are currently active in the same region where the Fireflies were. Contacting the WLF might give some truth to what happened to the Salt Lake Hospital. Ellie tells Dina that she will go with her to the Seraphites. With this, each character in the pair has their own motive to go on the same journey, unlike in the game where Dina just goes along with her because reasons. In the game, Dina is one of the biggest missed potential in the story. She is a sidekick that has nothing and only exists to help Ellie get laid, so she can have her CW teen drama. She had no motive to go with Ellie. She is barely active on her own and feels more like a character that joins the party in a JRPG to travel. Compare her to someone like, let's say, Ellie from the first game, or even Sam from Uncharted 4. In those games, the sidekick is important for the protagonist's growth. And the reason why the relationship works is because the games spend time to develop the relationship to make the audience invest in it. Those characters are far more interesting, had more expressions, had more personality, and didn't feel like an one-note character. On the contrary, I couldn't care less when Dina talked along my adventure. She is the pinnacle of a character who doesn't exist to be multifaceted or have any real character, but only exists to be a sideline romantic interest because really there is nothing to the relationship. We don't see what's the basis for them to stick together. What's causing them to love each other? She's just a partner of Ellie and pops up from time to time to start emo teen drama. This matters because the first game was all about the relationship, developing through the journey and hardships. That was the selling point. That's why people love the story. This is a symptomatic problem with the side cast and Ellie's storyline. What arc does Dina even have? Or Jesse? Even with Tommy, who is shown to be changed at the end of the game, we don't see his growth whatsoever. It's entirely off-screened. Their motivations are not explored. What are their dreams? What do they want out of life more than anything? What about their past that's affecting them right now? I can tell all those questions with Ellie and Sam. I can't with Dina, Jesse, and Tommy. The game gives them something to do, like chasing after them or protecting them to move the characters to the different locations. But they are not even real characters. They are plot devices to move the characters. Nothing more. On the contrast, Abby's side fares better in this aspect, because Yara and Lev do have more developments than Ellie's team. At least I know what their backstories and their dreams are. My solution was to take the characteristics of Yara and Lev into Dina, merging all of them into one. One solid character is better than 4 empty characters. So from here, Ellie and Dina set out for Seattle in the same way they did in the game, but instead of Ellie on the path to revenge, it's Ellie on the path to self-discovery, to find the truth. Ellie is wondering about Joel's possible reaction to her journey. She asks Dina why she left the Seraphites. Dina says it's because when she was assigned to be a wife for an elder, denied her wish of becoming a soldier, she shaved her head.
For a long time, I didn't understand why he was questioning the laws, the traditions. He had to keep it to himself. I was hoping he'd snap out of it. He seemed fine for a while, but then he shaved his head. like one of the men. It was suicide.
Is that when you ran?
He wanted to be a soldier, but they decided he was to be a wife to one of the elders. It's tradition.
This brazen act of defiance is met with outrage among the community, which deemed Dina an apostate and forced her to flee for her life. Her mother chose to repent for her daughter's actions by abstaining from food. However, Dina has nostalgia for the community. In some ways, she is still a woman of faith, and her days as the member of the community was the time when she felt she had the purpose. The pair reaches the city. Ellie suggests making a contact with WLF, saying they might be helpful in their task to rescue Dina's family, even though her hidden reason is the personal one, which is to make contact with the Fireflies. Dina disagrees, as she was the member of the Seraphites, and considering the WLF is fighting a war against them, she doubts they would welcome her. Ellie then suggests her to use a fake name when introducing herself to the WLF, while Ellie can use her real one. This also creates dramatic irony, because we, the player, know that Joel massacred the Fireflies in the hospital, while Ellie does not. She can only assume the Fireflies are still around, and they would welcome her since she was Marlene's foster daughter. As Ellie and Dina navigate throughout the city, they find themselves in the middle of a horde of the infected. They flee. Ellie and Dina separate in the chaos. Ellie outruns the infected for a while, but a runner pins her down. At that moment, she is rescued by the WLF patrol, like the set piece from Abby's introduction in the game. The patrol takes Ellie to the school, where the group of the WLF soldiers use as the outpost. Ellie thanks the WLF soldiers for their help and hospitality. She introduces herself with her real name Ellie, and asks them about contacting Fireflies, saying she's Marlene's friend. The mood in the room changes upon that revelation.
Felt like you heard of us or something.
One in the room responds,
Because they have.
and smashes her head with a bottle. The others jump in to subdue her. Ellie gets captured. A while later, Ellie awakens, tied to a table. The WLF soldiers threaten to slit her throat if she does not tell them how she found the WLF and whether there are more people on the way. Ellie is left confused. It is revealed the WLF is a splinter group of the Fireflies, and after the massacre at the hospital, Ellie has become infamous among them. One of the soldiers, whose brother died in that massacre, plans to kill Ellie in revenge, but their leader Isaac Dixon, via radio, orders them not to. Isaac is coming for them to meet Ellie. The WLF soldiers then try to torture Ellie, just not enough to kill her. Just before they can do that, Dina climbs onto the glass roof above them and shoots them. Dina takes the WLF map regarding the Seraphites' whereabouts. The WLF soldiers, who have not heard Isaac's order from the radio, rush in to shoot Ellie, forcing the pair to fight their way out of the school. Ellie and Dina get chased through the WLF-occupied zones. Going from the school, to the streets, to the broadcasting station, Ellie and Dina fight the WLF troops, all the while Isaac and his forces are on the tail, like Kathleen from the TV series. We also learn about the war between the Washington Liberation Front and the Seraphites along the way. After the WLF defeated the military, the Seraphite prophet led her community into the formerly Feder-controlled suburbs and began preaching her ideas there. Some residents disliked her intrusion. In fact, some residents, in fear, joined the WLF to fight against the Seraphites. However, the prophet's efforts did lead to members within the suburbs converting to her cause. The WLF grew hostile towards the prophet and her Seraphites, with their leader Isaac Dixon persecuting members they found. The prophet took a group of her soldiers to a supply route the WLF used and destroyed several trucks and killed a patrol of WLF soldiers. This action sparked a war between the Seraphites and the WLF. However, Dina insists the WLF's actions had left the prophet with little choice but to fight against the WLF for the Seraphites' own protection. As the ex-Seraphite, Dina is sympathetic toward her kind. She expresses disgust toward the WLF's ruthlessness as she sees the execution and torture sites of the Seraphite captives. Dina now wants to join the Seraphites' war against this monstrous WLF, wreaking havoc in Seattle. Eventually, Isaac catches up to Ellie and Dina at the broadcasting station. Ellie and Dina are trapped. Isaac Dixon is the chief antagonist in this rewrite. For Isaac's character, I am thinking a villain akin to Asav from Uncharted, The Lost Legacy, who was the best and the most proper villain out of any Naughty Dog game. As a character, he had a personality and wasn't just there to fill the screen with one-note villainy. He had a rule, a code, a philosophy which, if ever given time to expand, could really make for an interesting story. Too bad that he wasn't given that. This Isaac could be that kind of antagonist, but properly fleshed out. Cornering Ellie and Dina, Isaac says it's all a mistake, and he wishes no harm to Ellie. And as proof of that, he steps into the building with no weapon, while holding the diary of Anna, Ellie's mother. Isaac reveals to Ellie he was a loyal second-in-command of Marlene and played a crucial part in building the Firefly group in Washington. If you want to create a deeper connection with Marlene, maybe he can be Marlene's brother, though it could feel like a fanfic approach of writing. Isaac tells her the real truth of what happened at the Firefly Hospital at Salt Lake. Ellie was the only known immune patient, but Joel forcibly took her away and murdered Marlene.
You just come after her.
Isaac explains he wants to realize Marlene's unfulfilled goal, which was to make a cure. Isaac has been looking for the light for his continued struggle, and the vaccine is that light. To lighten the candle of hope and fulfill Marlene's lost cause, so that his struggle was not wasted. This news devastates Ellie. She does not want to believe him, but he has the receipts. When Ellie asks him about what he plans to do with Joel, the situation changes. It becomes clear Isaac is also blinded with rage for what happened at the Salt Lake Hospital. For him, there's another reason to hold Ellie under the WLF captivity, which is to take her hostage and use her to lure Joel. The rewrite applies Abby's familial revenge storyline to Isaac's characterization.
Think about what he did. How many people are dead because of him?
This Isaac is conflicted between two sides, creating a dramatic tension. Would he be doing for the betterment of humanity, or would he be doing it out of spite and vengeance? He isn't even sure himself. Speaking of Ellie's immunity, this is one of the reasons why I have doubts if this game works as a continuation of Part 1 as Naughty Dog intended, because only some parts from the original have been used and built upon as a core of Part 2, while ignoring others, such as Firefly's finding about Ellie's immunity. Ellie's immunity and the creation of vaccine play no part in Part 2, even though it was a huge deal in Part 1. That was the whole point of Ellie and Joel's journey. However, Part 2 just cast that story thread out by telling U.S. Jerry was the only person who could have developed a cure for the cordyceps infection, so that the sequel doesn't have to deal with that story element.
They said, even if we found her or by some miracle found someone else that's immune, it'd make no difference. Because the only person who could develop a vaccine is dead.
You cannot selectively pick some of the story elements from the first game when you are making a direct sequel. This would not be such a problem when it is a sequel with different characters as protagonists or a soft reboot/sequel like God of War, which is meant to be a new start, but when you are making a direct sequel, and even calling it Part 2, everything has to come back and properly build on it. Enough criticizing, more rewriting. Guessing Isaac's hidden agenda to use her as a hostage to bait Joel and kill him. Ellie steals Anna's diary from Isaac and runs. Isaac shoots Dina, wounding her. Ellie and Dina flee into the underground, infected-filled metro. A squad of WLF soldiers follow them in, and a battle ensues between the WLF and the clickers in the area. Ellie and Dina continue onwards, encountering more infected, including several shamblers. The pair make it to the street level, but a train car Ellie is walking through collapses, resulting in Ellie falling into the spore-infested station and her gas mask breaking. A runner then attacks Ellie, but Dina jumps down and saves her. Dina notices Ellie's cracked mask.
Ellie, your mask! Here, we can share mine.
No!
What?
Don't take it! Stop!
Ellie, stop! Ellie, stop! What?
No! Ellie, no!
Stop! I'm not infected! I'm not coughing, do you see?
A horde of infected charge at the pair, forcing them to flee to the upper levels. They make it out alive, but Dina grows weak due to the injury and collapses to the ground. Ellie picks her up and helps walk her to a nearby movie theater. While resting shelter in the theater, Ellie confirms what Isaac said about her is true and apologizes for lying about her real intent for coming to Seattle with her. As she tells Dina to scold her, as she deserves it, Dina also reveals her own secret to Ellie.
I think I'm pregnant.
What? Don't worry, it's not yours.
What are we supposed to do now?
Nothing. I just need to rest for a second.
Are you fucking kidding? How long have you known?
It was late a few weeks ago.
A few weeks? We could have still turned back.
I didn't know. I wasn't sure, okay? I didn't want to be a burden.
Well, you're a burden now, aren't you?
Ellie decides to let her rest while she ensures the theater is safe. Ellie reads Anna's diary to get some clues. She looks into the time when Anna was active as a firefly at Seattle. We, the player, transport to the flashback sequences.
Abby. Oh. Easy.
We are shown that Anna is Marlene's trustworthy companion, and they are going out together to build the Firefly organization in Seattle, like the early Abby section in the game. Anna is fighting on the front lines against the Fedra to secure the Firefly control of Washington. Anna plays in the same way as Abby, a bulky, tanky character, contrasted to Ellie's light and lean movement. In addition, Isaac appears in the Anna flashback. He's Anna's friend and wide-eyed, cheery Firefly comrade, who has hope for a better future. This is contrasted to his present self, who has become like Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, disillusioned and hardened, willing to commit atrocities after the destruction of the Fireflies by Joel's hands. Afterwards, Dina is fixing an old radio. She pauses to pray. Ellie questions whether the Seraphite prophet knew what she was starting. Dina protests that she saved dozens of people in inexplicable ways. Dina recommends Ellie reading the prophet's writings, as she would benefit from them. Dina and Ellie repair the radio and use it to listen to Isaac's communications. Isaac desires revenge for what Joel did to Marlene and the Fireflies. Once Joel gets taken care of, Isaac's bigger plan is to take over Jackson and put that community under the WLF control, to militarize it into the powerful force against the Fedra. Ellie and Dina turn pale. Now, we have greater stakes. We care about it because we, the player, experience the life in Jackson. Ellie tracks the reports by the WLF of combat situations. Assuming it is the conflict between the WLF and the Seraphites, Ellie goes there to track them. Though Dina wants to join her, Ellie insists she stays given her state.
I got something. Shit.
What the hell are you doing here?
Ellie turns around and discovers that it was Joel.
You think I'd let you do this on your own?
As the trailer advertised. But he didn't come alone. Jesse is also with Joel and has come here for Dina.
This on your own?
Jesse.
Where's Dina?
She's safe. She's just sick.
What kind of sick?
They have been following Ellie and Dina's tracks to Seattle since they left, but were ambushed by the WLF on their way. After Ellie explains what happened to her and who Isaac is, they fight their way back to the theater through the truck like the game.
Dina! Hey. Oh my god. Jesse.
Hey, Dina. Ooh.
Oh, hey. You okay?
Nothing no sleep won't take care of.
While Dina embraces Jesse, Ellie and Joel have an argument to have. Joel demands Ellie to go back to Jackson to raise alarm about the possible invasion by the WLF. When Ellie inquires him about the truth, Joel tries to pivot the matter by appealing to Dina's health, saying they need to stop this journey for the sake of her. Ellie pushes him away and demands he tell her the truth.
Tell me what happened here. If you lie to me one more time, I'm gone. You will never see me again. But if you tell me the truth, I'll go back to Jackson. No matter what it is. Just say it, Joel.
Making a vaccine would have killed killed you. So I stopped them.
Joel's confession, at last, confirms what Isaac has said. Ellie breaks down. Although she agrees to ride back to Jackson, she declares she will sever her ties with Joel for good.
Don't you fucking touch me! I'll go back, but we're done.
Dina still wants to bring her mother back, even though Jesse and Joel shoot down the idea. Ellie no longer wants to risk her and Joel's lives further, and Dina is at grave stakes with the injury and pregnancy. Regardless, the decision is made. They will return to Jackson, but not now due to Dina's current state. Although Jesse is a surgeon, the injury is serious that he cannot patch her up in the theater. Her injury is infected into cellulitis, which is developing into sepsis. It is life-threatening for her and her fetus. They need equipment and medical supplies fast, but they don't know where they could get them. Ellie locates where the ex-Firefly hospital is through the Anna flashback by reading the diary, where we play as Anna in the various stages of her life. Ellie now wants to find herself through her mother. She wants to discover Anna's trail. As she shut Joel from her familial connection, she wants to form a connection to her real family, and she believes maybe rediscovering who Anna was might fulfill her life. Instead of Ellie following Tommy's trail as it was in the game, it's Anna's trail, following her footsteps. It also creates a fun connection to the Uncharted games, where Nathan Drake is following the trail of Sir Francis Drake by pretending to be his descendant. In Uncharted 3 and 4, it is revealed that Nate did that to give himself a purpose in his life and adventures, so that he won't be another normal thief.
Now, as for our new name, Mom believes that Sir Francis Drake had heirs. Who's to say he didn't?
You're serious, aren't you?
Nathan, we were meant for this. And I promise, you and me together, we're gonna go far. So what do you say? Nathan Drake?
It's the same logistics applied to Ellie's journey here. Anna's story covers a long stretch of her life, with bits of her life scattered as flashbacks, like with Abby in the game. We see her interaction with Owen and the other Fireflies, falling in love, the aquarium scene, etc. She eventually gets pregnant. Those can be a lot more compelling because those scenes would be framed as clues about the mystery of Ellie's parents from her perspective, as well as the guide to where Ellie should go to find the hospital. In a sense, even dead, Anna is still guiding Ellie's path. After Ellie locates the ex-Firefly hospital, they decide to head there. There should be everything Jesse needs to treat Dina's wound. Driving the truck, they head to the hospital. Joel takes the wheel. Ellie refuses to take the passenger seat. She does not want to be near him, so she rides in the back of the truck with Jesse, while Dina takes the passenger seat. As Ellie's group drives to the hospital, they talk about Dina's pregnancy, leading to Ellie realizing Jesse is the father.
Is she pregnant?
Yeah.
Jesse also questions how she acts distantly toward her father. Ellie just says she doesn't want to be around Joel right now. Soon enough, the WLF chasers on horseback ambush the truck. This is repurposed from Abby's section from the game. Joel attempts to outmaneuver them. But they eventually crash outside a large hardware store.
You okay? Yeah.
Now on foot, Ellie and Jesse team up together to make a way for Dina and Joel. They cut through the newspaper office, the sewers, the train station, and the park. We have banters and dialogues peppered throughout this section to build Jesse's character. Ellie gets separated from Jesse momentarily to clear out the obstacle. But the Seraphites ambush and capture Ellie, thinking she is the member of the WLF. Ellie gets knocked out, and she has a dream. We see a partially adapted segment from the tie-in comic of the first game, American Dreams, in which Ellie meets Marlene for the first time.
There's no need for that.
I won't let the motion comic play entirely due to the copyright issue, so I'll narrate the synopsis of this scene. Marlene removes the binds from Ellie's legs with a knife, and Ellie demands that Riley is untied. The Fireflies comply, and Marlene hands Ellie an envelope with the instructions to open it when she returns to the school. Riley tells Marlene of her desire to join the Fireflies and says that she knows who she is, due to having her want to poster.
You're going back to your pampered school, and I am not wasting my time with this.
This here's a smuggler's tunnel. Now you gotta pay the toll. Shit, Fireflies. It don't matter.
Marlene tells the men that they cannot have the guns, but that she will give them ration cards. The man speaking gets angry at her refusal to hand over the guns, and shoots one of the men, killing him instantly. Riley is frozen in place, and Ellie knocks her out of the way of conflict, while Marlene attacks. Ellie notices a way out, but Riley refuses to leave and runs for a gun near one of the men. Before she can grab it, he pulls her back by her hood. However, before he can harm her, Ellie hits him with a brick. He turns his attention to Ellie, and while he does so, Riley grabs the gun and shoots him, knocking him to the ground. When he opens his eyes, Marlene has a gun pointed in his face and shoots. Riley makes a comment that this is the second time that day that they had helped her. Marlene gets angry at her and accuses her of treating this as a game, while Ellie is held back by another Firefly. Marlene goes on to tell Riley that she has no idea of the Firefly's sacrifice. Riley responds by saying that she watched her father turn and kill her mother, and that she had to kill her own father. Marlene says this is what every other survivor has done. Riley says she believes in the Fireflies, and Marlene tells her that so did the man who was shot before. Marlene threatens to kill Riley as this will be her fate as a Firefly.
Or maybe I'll just maim you. Plenty of Fireflies end up as cripples. Still want to become one of us? Fine. Let's see what you're made of.
Back up, asshole!
There's no need for this. I wasn't going to—
Get the fuck away from her!
Ellie. Take it easy, Ellie.
How do you know my name?
I know more than your name.
Marlene responds by saying she knew her mother and that the envelope was a letter from her mother. Marlene continues to tell her that she has had people watching Ellie as she promised her mother she would. She asks Riley for advice on what to do, and Riley tells her to lower the gun. Ellie gives Marlene the gun.
What was her name? My mom.
Anna. When the time is right, I'll tell you all about her. Just know that she gave up everything to save you. Don't throw that away. That ladder will lead you to an alley right behind your school. I'm watching you. Don't pull another stunt like this. Oh, wait. It was Anna's. Try not to get it confiscated.
Marlene is suddenly shot. She collapses. It's Joel.
You just come after her.
Like Abby in the game, Ellie gets hung and almost disemboweled, which is a brutal execution ritual the Seraphites perform against the captured WLF members. The Seraphites have gotten a lot more brutal over the course of the war, more so than Dina remembers. Jesse comes in just in time to rescue Ellie, and they fight their way out, alerting the Seraphites. Believing Jesse and Ellie are the WLF, the Seraphites begin chasing them.
They are rusted with sin.
What is
Free?
Oh, shit! No, no, no!
Now he is free. Now he is free. Search for stragglers. May she guide us.
You motherfucker!
With the storm blowing in the night, Ellie and Jesse lose the way to the hospital. It is a difficult place to travel in this condition, so Ellie compares and contrasts the surroundings to Anna's diary. For example, she realizes this place was the hideout where Anna used to be stationed at.
This is it! Jesus. How the hell are we crossing this?
Ellie and Jesse take the Seraphite route and cross the high path between the skyscrapers that induce sacrophobia. They fight the Seraphites on the sky bridges. Jesse, who is more unafraid of heights, is able to jump gaps and help Ellie get into places she could not on her own.
It's gonna be okay. Eyes on me.
Shit.
Oh my god. Almost there. No. Shit. Hey, look! You can see the hospital now. Oh fuck! Oh fuck! Abby! Hold on! Oh my god! Oh my god!
You ready? Can I get a minute? Please.
They begin descending the partially demolished hotel to return to the street level. In a stairwell, Ellie finds the corpse of a Fedra soldier with a note about a nest of infected and Fedra's failure to demolish the building. On the next landing, Ellie sees the hotel rooms are full of spores. Ellie says her gas mask was taken by the Seraphites, and Jesse says his was broken. Ellie reveals her immunity to Jesse, and she is able to breathe the spores. So Ellie leaves an astonished Jesse in the stairwell to search the rooms for one. She finds the bodies of other Fedra soldiers, and takes an intact gas mask from one for Jesse. Ellie's activity attracts the attention of several stalkers, who attack her. After defeating the stalkers, Ellie reaches Jesse and helps fit him with the gas mask. They return to the spore-filled rooms to continue their descent. Jesse finds a fire hose, which they use as a rope to reach the lower floors. The pair find it thick with fungal growths and partially destroyed from Fedra explosives. Ellie and Jesse make their way through the collapsed rooms, fighting through the infected that infest the building. Along the way, Ellie finds a flamethrower on one of the Fedra corpses, which helps her clear the infestation. After a final fight with several clickers, wall-grown stalkers, and a bloata, Ellie and Jesse reach the ground floor. Outside the hotel, Jesse points out another set of construction elevators, noting that was the path they would take if they had not fallen into the hotel. Ellie, irritated, insists they press on. Ellie and Jesse stop just outside the hospital, where they reunite with Joel and Dina. Joel and Jesse thank each other for helping their comrades, but Ellie refuses to return the same appreciation for Joel for helping Dina. Meanwhile, the alerted Seraphites mobilize their forces in the direction of the hospital in pursuit. Jesse performs a surgery on a wounded Dina in the operating room. Jesse says he needs the specific supplies to treat her wound. Joel and Ellie descend to the lower floors to search for what Jesse asked. The pair discusses along the way, like Ellie warning Joel not to get in her way, saying she doesn't need him to defend her or harass Jesse about patrols just because she goes on them with him, or accusing Joel as trying to control her fate, like the last time at the Firefly Hospital. They find the triage center from the outbreak, still equipped with airlocks to contain the cordyceps spores. Past the airlock, they find massive fungal growths and, to her disappointment, no medical supplies. Without a power supply, they are unable to open the airlock to the garage or trauma center, and continues to the surgery. The surgery suites are similarly sealed, forcing Ellie to locate the wing's generator and restore power. Starting the generator gives them access to the surgery suites, but also releases several clickers that were trapped in the sealed rooms. Ellie and Joel kill and avoid the infected in order to search the suites, but find no supplies. They return to the triage center and find the doors to the trauma center have been torn open. The room beyond is packed with fungal growths and dead infected that have fused into a solid mass. A trail of blood leads them from the trauma center to the garage, where the airlocks have again been torn open. They find an ambulance which has the supplies they need. As soon as they get the surgical kit into their backpacks, the Rat King attacks. The enormous infected, made of clickers, stalkers, and a bloater fused by cordyceps fungus, chases Ellie and Joel through the halls of the hospital, using its massive size to break through walls in pursuit. The Rat King catches Ellie, but their combined weight breaks through the floor and both crash into a flooded lower level. Ellie fights the Rat King alone for a moment, eventually causing the stalker portion to break off. Once the blow to half is defeated, the stalker runs away further into the hospital. Lacking another exit, Ellie is forced to follow the stalker, which attacks her again when she follows it into an air duct. At the most dangerous moment, Joel returns After defeating the Rat King, Ellie finds another clue about her mother's life. Here, there is a big reveal regarding the end of Anna's story. a reveal that shakes Ellie's positive view of the Fireflies and Marlene. Maybe Anna's death was something caused by the Fireflies, and Marlene is culpable, which is why she took Ellie to raise her out of guilt. Maybe Marlene forced Anna to do a risky thing or betrayed Anna at the end for the greater good of the organization, which is why Anna got the bite.
Hey! Hey! Let me the fuck out! God damn.
You're gonna dislocate your shoulder.
I don't know exactly how it could work. One idea is maybe Anna getting a bite and Ellie getting an immunity weren't mere accidents. Maybe they were all planned by the Fireflies, like using Anna as a test subject of some sort without her knowing it, sacrificing her for the possible cure. But whatever the reveal is, it needs to show Marlene's morally ambiguous side that we saw in the first game, which leads to Ellie feeling betrayed by Marlene. Because what the Fireflies did to her mother parallels to what they did to Ellie. With this realization, Ellie feels betrayed and begins to sympathize with Joel's choice. Because if you look at the first game, the Fireflies are either horribly incompetent or malicious.
The big one for me is that a lot of it is determined on what choice you make at the end. If you've played the game, you're probably thinking, there is no choice to make, what is he talking about? The real choice is whether or not you have faith in Naughty Dog's writers to decide whether or not this section is full of really stupid plot holes, or if they're intentionally in the game in order to support Joel's decision. So let's go through that. First off, the Fireflies are a bunch of amateurs that have no idea what the fuck they're doing. Marlene is near dead the first time you meet her. Her group was being squashed out of a safe zone that just Joel and Tess had a better handle of. This is an organization that's so mismanaged and desperate that it had to entrust the potential cure for all of humanity to two strangers, who also happen to be some of the worst thugs around that are doing the deal to get their stash of weapons, of all things. This is a group that has continually been absent in every area they're meant to have under their control. They're losing bases and resources all over the place. The perimeter guards didn't even know how to handle a drowned girl and a man with both of his hands in plain view trying to resuscitate her, which almost resulted in that precious cure for humanity dying right there on the spot. Which, hey, if Marlene was smart, she would have just told Joel that Ellie died right there in the street and that they quickly did an autopsy to salvage what information that they could. It gets worse because you can't even trust their research staff of Nobel Prize rejects, because the last time you saw some of their work, it was a man so stupid that he managed to get bit by one of his own test monkeys that he had just infected with cordyceps.
It bit me. Oh my god.
And these are the people that want to work on Ellie. These are the people that think killing one of the rare few or only cases of someone with immunity to cordyceps is the right call, without even a day of observation or live tests or all of the scans that they could possibly think of before resorting to ripping the fungus out of her brain. Joel is not unconscious long enough for the Fireflies to have done even a fraction of all of the possible tests that should be ruled out before they have to kill Ellie. And to be clear, this isn't even about the moral dilemma at hand, it's about saving humanity. Killing her is forever destroying this one potentially unique instance of immunity. They are idiots who have no clue what they're doing by jumping to this irreversible procedure. The average IQ of the planet goes up when you kill this guy.
No!
Which brings us to the choice. Do you think that the Naughty Dog writers chose to ignore all of these really obvious things in order to make this an interesting, morally gray problem? Or were they left in on purpose in order to make the Fireflies look like idiots so that Joel isn't that much of a crazed lunatic when he goes on a murder spree? On the flip side, the more you think about it, the more you realize that if the game is taking the Fireflies seriously here, and that it actually thinks they're making the right decision, then a lot of the game disintegrates and becomes a waste of time. This may seem like I'm biased because I like the game so much, but I'm willing to think that it's this version that's intended. The reason for that is how Marlene and this grunt treat Joel like a piece of shit, with Marlene grandstanding and claiming that she has it way harder than Joel, which is invalidating a huge chunk of his life and the most recent events of the prior year he spent traveling at her request. They're so eager to send him packing on his way without any sign of the supplies that were originally promised to him, without any speaking of tests, and they have the audacity to act like they're giving him this huge gift for not killing him along with Ellie.
In retrospect, if The Last of Us intent is to convey two sides of hypothetical morality, which was confirmed by Part 2, the game presents an utterly incompetent group that is written like a bunch of assholes. Yet it wants us to feel conflicted and bad about you going against them in the hospital. Hey, we made you walk across the entire country with this girl that you'd inevitably grow close with. We didn't tell you that she was going to be dissected at the end, nor are we planning on telling her. Instead, we're basically going to drug her, drug you, and then cut her open and hope that we might get a functional cure. Also, we're not paying you, and there's about a 60% chance that we're just going to shoot you in the back once you leave. How is this a conflicting choice? They are at best described as untrustworthy and incapable. So even though Joel is acting for emotional reasons, the rational thing to do if you want to kill Ellie to develop a cure is to kill the Fireflies and take her elsewhere like Fedra. There's not much of a dilemma because there is nothing in the game that supports the Fireflies being in the right, even though the writers really want to sell otherwise. The Fireflies is a shallowly written organization. They are not fleshed out or explored. Are you asking me to sympathize with the group because they are fighting Fedra when we don't even see if they are as terrible as they say they are in their current form? No part of the story makes me think that maybe the Fireflies are good people forced to do morally questionable things for the betterment of humanity, especially when we barely get to know who even Marlene is. If you are a revolutionary freedom-fighting group, you expect the slogan to be like, "No gods, no masters," or "Give me liberty, or give me death." Or, "You have nothing to lose but your chains." Instead, Marlene's rebels are called Fireflies, and their slogan is,
"Remember when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light."
What does that even mean? That sounds more like what a church would advertise on a billboard. Apparently, the Fireflies searched in vain for a cure many years before the first game, which is a too ambitious thing to spend their precious resources for the rebels, whose job should be, fighting the government. If anything, the Fireflies come across as a salvation cult worshipping the idea of a cure, and Ellie was their child sacrifice. Compare this to Lady Eboshi and the Iron Town from Princess Mononoke, which actually explored those two sides. Even if the story ultimately judges them to be in the wrong, it is not confused by what each side is trying to convey, how it's conveying that, and the pros and cons of each side's method. Even Abby's militant WLF always came across as an evil group with the obviously dubious boss residing the entire organization, and all the other characters are paper thin and one note. The writer should have put efforts to create a moral debate, not an exclusive one. That is why in this rewrite, taking the context provided in the first game into consideration, the Fireflies and the WLF and its extension are presented as the zealots for saviorism.
Yeah, you keep telling yourself that bullshit.
Not much different from the Seraphites. They just LARP as revolutionaries. Getting the supplies to Jesse, Jesse can proceed with Dina's surgery. Ellie and Joel wait outside the operating room. Joel asks if Dina is Ellie's girlfriend.
Dina, is she your girlfriend? You do like her.
So stupid.
I have no idea what that girl's intentions are, but I do know that she would be lucky to have you.
You're such an asshole.
Jesse finishes the operation, telling Ellie and Joel that Dina will be okay. Dina looks at them and smiles in gratitude for helping her, to which Ellie smiles back. Left alone with only two in the room, Ellie asks about how Dina is feeling after the operation, and Dina reveals that she hurts less now, thanks to Jesse. Ellie tells how she bonded with Jesse during their journey to the hospital, and that Jesse now knows about her immunity. Ellie smokes some weed Jesse has taken from Jackson. Dina smokes it to ease some pain. Ellie also takes some for recreational purpose.
You're infuriating.
Have you met you?
You make me want to go back outside into that blizzard.
No one is stopping you.
This better be better than a 6.
Eventually, they start make out. Ellie and Dina have a love scene here. Because they have been in hardship together for a while, falling in love with each other right here comes across as more natural than placing the romance scene early in the Jackson section. Ellie tries to persuade Dina away from going to the Seraphites, as they are no longer all that rosy as she remembered. Dina doesn't believe Ellie. During anesthesia, she had a dream about the Prophet and now believes that she survived because the Prophet has a plan for her. She's alive because her fate is to go back to the organization and asks Ellie to join her, since the Seraphites could accept her.
Jesse? Just stay there, okay?
Are you okay?
Will
What's
you wait,
going on?
please? What? Just turn around. What are you doing?
Are you kidding me?
That relief is quickly over, as the hospital is surrounded by the WLF forces.
You have nowhere to go.
Not gone! Look out! He's running!
Hands in the air, I shoot this one too.
Don't you do it, Ellie. Get out of here.
Stand up! Now!
Don't you fucking dare!
Shut the fuck up! Fuck. All right. Stop! Stop! Toss your weapon. Toss your weapon! Fuck.
No.
He did what he did to save me. There is no cure because of me. I am the one that you want. Just
Let him go.
Ellie and Jesse get captured and brought out of the hospital, while Joel and Dina are isolated in the building, overlooking from the window. The situation is deadlocked. Holding Ellie as a hostage, he threatens to kill Ellie unless Joel surrenders. Joel and Dina attempt to negotiate, but Isaac immediately shoots Jesse. He aims his gun at Ellie. The WLF doctors object, saying that Ellie must not die, for she is a valuable resource to create the vaccine. But Isaac doesn't seem to care. His thirst for vengeance outweighs all other priorities. As Joel comes out to surrender, the Seraphites ambush the WLF, erupting in a big firefight. Even though the situation turns into chaos, Isaac's focus is single-minded. He prepares to shoot at Joel, but before he can fire, a dying Jesse, still alive, shoots Isaac in the back.
No! What the fuck?
Seizing this chance, Ellie and Joel fight their way out through both factions. Isaac is taken away. He is wounded, but not dead. Dina is in shock over Jesse's death. Dina surrenders herself to the incoming Seraphites. She tells the Seraphites she has reverted back to her old way and wants to rejoin the organization, out of anger for the WLF as well as the nostalgia for her mother. The Seraphites accept her and retreat. Relying on each other, Ellie and Joel escape the firefight. They then chase the Seraphites to rescue Dina, only to discover them commandeering the boats to return to the island. Ellie is agape out in horror. Joel argues they need to go back to Jackson right now because Dina has made her choice. She voluntarily rejoined the Seraphites. Ellie is adamant she can't leave Dina because she doesn't know what the Seraphites have changed in her since she was exiled. Because Joel wants to make amends for her. After all the lies for years, he feels guilty and apologetic for Ellie. This is the least he can do. Joel then suggests to get a boat from the marina to sail to the island. Heading towards the marina, they reach the main road, where Isaac's blocking their path as a sniper.
Get down!
Joel and Ellie work together to take down the sniper, evading and fighting the infected in their way and sneaking from the sniper's sight. They mention it is reminiscent of the time when Joel and Ellie confronted the hunter sniper in the first game. Through hardship, Ellie and Joel rekindle their relationship, almost as if hearkening back to part 1.
Down!
As soon as she steps onto the outside terrace of the restaurant, where Isaac ambushes Ellie, kicks her against the balcony fence, and tries to choke her with his rifle. Joel appears, allowing Ellie to grab his gun and shove him into the waters below. Isaac's not yet dead. Ellie and Joel have opened up to each other. On the boat, Joel and Ellie have the forgiveness dialogue from the game. Ellie lashes out, shouting about how Joel robbed her life of meaning by preventing her death at that Salt Lake hospital.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I'd like that.
Joel says he was wrong to lie to her. He admits he robbed her choice, and now he wants to let her live her own life with the woman she loves, the life not controlled by himself, but the one she can chart for herself. Throughout the story, Ellie has learned to live a life for herself without all the cure business, without a concern for becoming a savior. She has learned about her past, her mother, and gotten in love with Dina. Maybe it's time for her to shackle off the burden and enjoy a life on her own. When they arrive at the island, Joel decides to look after the boat, while Ellie goes in to save Dina. Ellie finds Dina being taken to her home and meeting her mother just in time. As a born-again woman of faith, Dina has confessed what she did all those years after leaving the religion, including her romantic relationship with Ellie. This is met with outrage among her mother and the surrounding guards. Although a homosexual relationship was always strictly forbidden as a sin under the Seraphite tradition, religious discipline has gotten far worse ever since the death of the prophet. The Seraphites became even more dogmatic and fundamentalist in response to the crisis and war. It's become an extremist cult. Now Dina has been eternally dirted and sinned. Dina's mother screams and tries to kill her apostate daughter, then listen to her. Dina's pleas fall on deaf ears, and the Seraphite guards seem to encourage the execution. Ellie jumps in, killing the nearby Seraphite guards, and then tries to stop Dina's mother. Dina shoots her mother to defend Ellie, killing her. Dina sobs in grief and guilt. Ellie consoles her. The Seraphites were never going to accept her as who she is.
You defended yourself. You did nothing wrong. It's gonna be okay, I promise.
Dina fully turns against the Seraphites. They need to quickly leave. In an attempt to chase Joel and Ellie and wipe out the Seraphites for good, Isaac has conducted a WLF land invasion on the island. Alerted and praying to herself that Joel would be okay, Ellie and Dina race back to where the boat is.
Joel!
But Ellie's worst fears have been realized.
Get on the ground. You gonna kill me like a coward?
Isaac captures Joel and shoots his right leg with a shotgun to make sure he won't escape. Isaac orders his soldiers to capture Ellie and flees, with Joel as a captive. Ellie and Dina sneak and fight their way across the island to chase Isaac. They realize that leaving the way they came is no longer an option and that their best chance for escape is to reach the docks. Relying on each other, the two fight through both factions and the ensuing chaos to reach the docks. Both the WLF and the Seraphites are annihilated in the epic battle on the island. The two head into a burning barn to reach the boats to chase Isaac, but Isaac's right-hand brute ambushes them. Ellie engages the brute in a gruesome melee boss fight to save Dina. With Dina's intervention, Ellie successfully kills the brute. Ellie and Dina track them, continuing her pursuit of Isaac through the boat. They navigate the flooded streets as a thunderstorm rises. They steers the boat through rapids. Before they reach the aquarium, the boat's engine stalls, and the waves sweep Ellie and Dina into the waters. Ellie breaks off from Dina and swims the final stretch to the aquarium.
Fuck.
She comes across Isaac and his few remaining WLF soldiers with a severely beaten Joel and tries to save him, but is quickly subdued.
Pin her down!
Get off me!
Get her hand!
Get the fuck off me!
Isaac, now lost almost everything, muses to her. Most of his men and women have been killed in that island attack, including the doctors who were capable of manufacturing a cordyceps vaccine. But at least he got what he really wanted, destroying the Seraphites and Joel. Isaac makes Ellie watch him torturing Joel with a golf club. Ellie pleads for Isaac to let Joel go, watching helplessly as he finishes Joel off by smashing his head with a golf club.
Get up!
Isaac moves toward Ellie and raises his gun to shoot her, but his attention draws to Anna's diary Ellie dropped next to them. Isaac cannot pull the trigger. Instead, he looks down and warns Ellie to never cross paths with him again.
Don't ever let me see you again.
And knocks her out.
Ellie. I'm sorry. Jesse! They're down here!
Waiting for the thunderstorm to stop, Both Ellie and Dina are in a traumatized state after what has transpired. Together in the room with Joel's corpse in a shroud, Ellie contemplates what her actions have cost. One year later, Ellie and Dina now live on a farm outside of Jackson. Dina gave birth to a boy named JJ, and Ellie helps to raise him. While they are a happy family, Ellie remains psychologically traumatized from her ordeals. She suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder brought on by Joel's death and the events in Seattle. She has difficulty eating, insomnia, panic attacks, and flashbacks of her failing to save Joel's life. Tommy visits the farm. Ellie asks Tommy for news about Jackson and Maria, to which he reveals he and Maria have separated. The conversation reveals that for many months, Ellie, Dina, and Tommy have been going out of Jackson to track Isaac together in various risky journeys, and as a consequence, Tommy has become physically disabled. After getting shot in the head, he struggles to walk and lost one eyesight in her wife. Tommy then gives Ellie a lead she has been waiting at last. A new member in Jackson knows that Isaac's gang were heading to Santa Barbara to another resistance movement. But one difference in this rewrite, though. Tommy says that Isaac's efforts were thwarted by the Fedra. They got captured by, not the Rattlers, the government forces. Ellie had sworn to kill Isaac for his actions. He tries to convince Ellie to identify if this rumor is true, and if she finds him alive, kill him in his place, his permanent injuries preventing him from doing it himself. Dina says that if the Fedra captured Isaac, they would torture him for information and eventually execute him anyway, as they do to all rebels. It's over. Ellie does not need to get there to risk herself. It's not worth it.
We're done with that, so... I'm sorry.
Well... I can't go.
I know.
Reckon it's easy. Forget about her. You sitting all comfy way out here?
Hey.
I'll make her pay.
Tommy.
That's what you said when we got back to Jackson.
Tommy.
What a joke.
Hey. What the fuck was that?
Nothing.
God damn it, Tommy. You know what we've been through.
I'll save her. She made me a promise.
I don't fucking care.
I know you don't, Dina. That's your goddamn problem.
Listen,
Oh, you're not all fucking idiots.
you don't come back here to my house ever.
She visits Joel's grave to pay her tribute and wanders in Joel's house. She finds Joel's guitar and plays it, remembering him. Back in the farm, Ellie begins packing a bag. However, Dina awakens and finds her. She asks Ellie to come back to bed and discuss it in the morning, but Ellie reveals she had made up her mind, convinced killing Isaac will end her trauma. Dina begs her to stay, for she cannot lose another loved one. She is afraid that Ellie might end up becoming like Tommy, or dead. Despite Dina begging her to stay, Ellie leaves the house, abandoning her life with Dina and JJ. After several months, Ellie at last arrives at Santa Barbara. She finds Isaac and his men's sailboat and deduces where they headed. Ellie goes to the town, fighting a few infected along the way, until she sneaks to the Fedra Vita girl so that she can try interrogating her about the whereabouts of their base.
Hands up.
Easy.
Do you know a girl named Nora?
Sure, yeah.
Where is she?
Right after that, she is ambushed and restrained with a gag put in her mouth by the Fedra troops, who think she is a rebel. Ellie soon loses consciousness. Some time later, Ellie awakes and being taken away. Ellie goads the Fedra soldiers into pulling her into a clicker, who is hung upside down in a trap. Although she kills the Fedra soldiers, in that process, the clicker bites off her 2 fingers. An enraged Ellie drags the surviving Fedra soldier into a house, in which Ellie tortures and interrogates him about the whereabouts of Isaac. Where is their base?
I'm fucking dead anyway. Why would I tell you anything?
Because I can make it quick, or I can make it so much worse.
This is Ellie channeling her inner Joel. Afterward, Ellie is traumatized and covered in blood. She feels dirty about her deed. This is one of the reasons for making the enemies here Fedra, not the Rattlers, because it also removes the heroism of Ellie's actions of killing the slavers and freeing the slaves. At this point, the game frames Ellie's action needless. She has a new life and everything she needs to live a good life, but the unresolved past keeps dragging her. That is the intent of this section. You can go further with this question. In this rewrite, by having Ellie aware that the goal and the obstacles clearly, like the danger of how she's going after the government forces, just to kill a captured Isaac, who's soon to be killed regardless, it reinforces that thematic question. Is Ellie's another quest for revenge at this stage really worth it? Losing the new family and risking herself just to kill Isaac herself? It also makes sense of why the enemy NPCs at Santa Barbara are better armed than every enemy faction in the entire series. Considering Jackson and WLF didn't even have the automatic weaponry or armors, it isn't really convincing how some slaver group would be equipped with bulletproof armors and silence MP5S as it was in the game. Ellie makes her way to the resort that has been converted into the Fedra base.
My fingers. The body I've lost. I'm gonna make him give back our past.
She frees the prisoners, who seize the chance to steal some weapons from the gun cache, and prepare to assault the Fedra troops. But Ellie stops them and asks them about Isaac. One of the prisoners informs her that Isaac tried to escape and was strung up on the pillars at the nearby beach, left to die. Ellie then proceeds outside to the beach as the prisoners launch their attack on the Fedra. At the beach, she finds the pillars, where several people are strung up, exposed to the elements. I love Purposeless Rabithol's ending rewrite, so I'd like to repurpose it here.
When I walked out to those pillars on the beach and saw that hanging body with the ponytail, for one brief, magical moment, I thought this was the ending. No cutscene, no moment, no resolution, no catharsis. Abby is long dead. For about 15 seconds, I sat there staring at this lifeless body, and for once, I felt what the game wanted me to feel. Emptiness. It's just over. I was 100% ready to turn around and pull a straight-up Hotline Miami walk of shame back through the entire level. I thought that's what was gonna happen, that I'd have to wade back through the carnage and death I'd wrought on my journey through this dirty, sun-bleached hellscape while reflecting on my failures as a wife, a daughter, and a human being. I'd just have to get back on that boat and take it home. This was bold. This was a ballsy ending. All right, Ellie, time to go home.
Ellie travels back to the farm shared with Dina, only to find it abandoned. She makes her way to her drawing room, where she finds Joel's guitar. Ellie tries to play it, but her lack of 2 fingers makes it impossible to play correctly. Ellie remembers back the last honest dialogue between Ellie and Joel, where they decided they would try to repair their relationship.
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I like that.
Ellie sets the guitar down and leaves the farm. What do you think? Obviously, I have an advantage of hindsight that the developers didn't have. This is still a fanfiction, not a canon replacement, but I do think it is a better basis for the better story. Dina is the secondary protagonist, as much as Ellie was the secondary protagonist in the first game. The story is shorter and streamlined, while keeping the momentum throughout the journey. There are areas in the rewrite I am not fond of. I have not sorted out Anna's storyline, so her story is largely a collection of the ideas strung serially rather than an outline. Isaac's character could get more fleshed out, probably through the Anna flashbacks. He could interact with the main cast more, creating some antagonism between him and Ellie. He is still more predominant than Abby and Ellie's story in the game, but I feel there are some missing elements to make his character more impactful. The big problem with the rewrite is the revenge part at the end, which was lacking because it feels tacked on. We don't see the adventure of Ellie, Dina, and Tommy to avenge Joel and skip right to the farm scene, because that would add 10 more hours to the story. Maybe that gap could be covered through a DLC like the first game did with Left Behind. And I even thought about leaving Joel's death as a cliffhanger for the sequel. Personally, I wouldn't kill Joel at all and do the revenge story for Ellie, but for this rewrite, I aim to keep as many thematic motifs and scenes from the game as possible, albeit repurposed in a different context. Instead of making an entirely different continuity, I wanted the game's conclusion to connect to Part 3 as long as it won't feature Abby and Lev.